2. Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. It has now been 2 decades since my stint in Northbrook, Illinois, in the afternoon drive as Nasty Nationwide on the 101 Sports Radio Network, and then, of course, Sporting News Radio Network. The real story here is that all day long we would all say, who knows the most about sports here? Some of us would say Papa Joe. Some of us would say it was that crazy guy in the overnight that knows everything. Bob Kemp has returned out to the valley and the desert in Arizona since we parted 2 decades ago. He did radio on what used to be called The Deuce, that is now the SportsZone in 1060, and he covers the Cardinals as well as all sorts of cool sports stuff, and it's always great to have Bob Kemp back on my program. Bob, how goes it? There's life after Northbrook, Illinois, huh?
That's true. There is. Somehow. I don't know how that works. The weather's better here. I don't care if it's 120 or not some days. I'm not scraping and shoveling it. That's good for me.
But how's the pizza? That's the important thing, right?
That's an issue. I mean, well, there's still some good here. I mean, there's some Chicago places out here, but yeah, I do. Gino's is actually here now, so that's a good thing.
I had a Pizzeria Bianco out there in Scottsdale in the downtown.
Yeah.
One of the best pizzas I've ever had this side of Pizza John's in my place, you know?
Yeah, that's actually a good choice, too. So
you know what? I'm skinny, but I eat a lot, Bob. You know what I'm saying? So I got to call you about the Cardinals. They're coming to town, and I don't know much about the Cardinals, but I look up and down the roster, and I'm like, well, Max Williams and A.Q. Shipley and Terrell Suggs, and, we just go down the roster and see these guys we know. But Cliff Kingsbury, the whole thing feels a little bit unorthodox. Probably like running an RPO offense, right?
Yeah, it's a weird deal. I've watched 6 weeks of training camp and the preseason and the first game, and I'm still not sure I know much more than I did when we started. And obviously, they had a nice finish to the game the other day, but in the words of Kingsbury, is the worst 3 quarters he's ever seen of offense. And basically, I think it comes down. I don't care what kind of offense you're trying to run. If you can't pass block, or they have 5 guys in their offensive line that are better run blockers, easy for me to say, than pass blockers. And on Sunday, they're going to be, I think, down to their 3rd right tackle already. Marcus Gilbert was put on the injured list today, and they went out and signed another guy off the waiver wire, which is their 3rd guy in 3 weeks.
Well, you say you don't know much about them, and it really is fascinating because you and I have been at this a long time. 20 years ago, we were syndicated together and talking about all the teams and preseason and all the possibilities and where there's hope. Preseason football, it was never any good, but there was a part where somebody took the car out for a drive, maybe in the 3rd game, maybe for a half, where you could see how offensive units are working or what and now everything's not just vanilla or not playing at all. Nobody shows anything. It's almost like college football, where the first time you really see them go out for any test drive is, well, a couple of days ago, right? And we're all trying to piece this together. Can Pittsburgh be this bad? Can Miami be that bad? Can Cleveland be this bad? I don't know that we really are going to know much for a month as to who is doing what, and especially when health is involved, because when you're down to your 3rd right tackle, the exploitation of that in the defensive meeting room begins like Monday.
That's for sure. And, we didn't get to see – vanilla was the kind of the buzzword around here for a while. And even on Sunday, they came out and they did the no huddle. We did see a lot of 4 wide receivers, even some 5 wide receivers, but they did nothing until they really started to hurry up in that no huddle. It wasn't a no huddle and rush to the line of scrimmage and snap it as fast as you can type of thing. It was more like, okay, we're going to make sure the Lions don't substitute and so forth. But when they actually had to, basically make up a 3-score deficit in the last 11 minutes, when they did started to go to a so-called hurry-up offense, that's when they were really good. And they scored 5 straight possessions until, to me at least, I think Kingsbury made a mistake when he punted on 4th and 7 from the 46-yard line of Detroit with 1:10 to go, played for a tie. And he's supposed to be this out-of-the-box progressive, type of guy, and he played for a tie when the game was on the line with 1:10 to go, which everybody else seems to think that was a good idea around here, but I just thought it was ridiculous.
Bob, you've seen a lot of stuff out there. I mean, there's been a lot of change and really 2 really successful administrations out there in getting to the Super Bowl. Cliff Kingsbury and the notion that you're going to bring a semi-successful college coach into the game, who worked with Pat Mahomes, been around the game. It was unorthodox. I mean, about as unorthodox as Lamar Jackson is around here, right?
Exactly. And, the Kingsbury thing, I wouldn't have had any issue with it if he were brought in as the offensive coordinator, see if this offense can work in the NFL, la-di-da. But it was very surprising when he became the head coach, got that job. And, we don't even really know who else they interviewed for that position. We did know that the Steve Wilkes thing was a disaster. We knew that probably even during training camp last year. So they needed to change drastically. They went to the most drastic change possible. Steve Kimes, the GM, you would have to think that he's on the line here too if this doesn't work out. But I'm all for trying here because what we said that we had to sit through last year. They only won against two teams last year. They beat the Niners twice, and they won at Green Bay somehow. But Green Bay only won 6 games as it turned out. But they had to change things as extreme as possible, and they did. So let's see how this goes.
How did the Wilkes thing go so wrong? You know what I mean? Like, they've gotten it right a couple times out there. I mean, look, I go back to Bidwell and the old man trying to bring his team here in the 80s and, what a mess it was, and sitting out on those benches and sweating my ass off out at Sun Devil Stadium, for forever, and nobody out there on those crazy aluminum benches. And then the stadium happens, and Kurt Warner happens, and good things happen. And how do you mess that up that badly?
Well, there's a couple ways to look at this. The Super Bowl team, that team was mediocre for basically 14 weeks and got hot at the end and had an incredible playoff run with Warner, and Larry Fitzgerald had the month of his life, which has been a good life in many ways, but that's the best he ever played. And they really were within one pass of one drive, at least one defensive stop of winning the Super Bowl. Then they had a decline after Warner retired. The following year, they were actually better than the year they went to the Super Bowl. And the following year was Warner's final year. He retired. And then they had some older players, and that just wasn't going to sustain. Then they got real bad. And then they hired Arians, and they brought in Carson Palmer, which seemed to be kind of a questionable move at the time. But they were a really good marriage together. They still had some good receivers. They drafted some very good players for the most part for a 2 or 3 year stretch, and that ended pretty badly also. And transition's a kind word for the last couple of years here.
Yeah, and when we were out there for the Super Bowl, right, the Arians thing was going on. Fitzgerald's still out there catching 100 yards worth of passes this week. But it really felt vibrant to me in a way it never did, right? I mean, I've been going out to Arizona for 30 years for a couple of Super Bowls in a couple of places and different administrations. I'm always out there for spring training every other year, whatever, with owners' meetings and whatnot. So I feel like I get a vibe on it. And, the Diamondbacks change jerseys all the time. You never know what they're doing. But the football team felt like it got entrenched over the last decade in the Dome. And to have to deal with 3 and 13s again, it feels very old school Bidwell. Like, it might be years picking this thing up. We haven't had that in Baltimore on the football side. We were very familiar on the baseball side. But on the football side, it felt like that the administration kind of had it together. Last year kind of makes it look Daffy Duck all of a sudden all over again.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the old man is, he's still with us, but Michael's been running the organization for at least 15 years or so now, maybe a little longer than that, actually. And, they did some good things. You mentioned the new stadium, and that was certainly a turning point. I'm not sure they'd still be here if they hadn't gotten the new stadium. In fact, they probably would have been gone. And the
Los Angeles Cardinals, they could have fit another team there, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I even mentioned sort of joked at the time before they got the new stadium if they were going to be the Los Angeles Cardinals, but that didn't happen. And it's just they've still sold out technically every game that they've played since they moved to Glendale, and there's lots of games where there's obviously there's tons of no-shows, including last week for the opener, which was a little unique. I don't know if people still need to see it first before they're going to show up, but it would be interesting to see. They got a couple home games after this week to see if there's another reaction, and I'm guessing that this Sunday's not going to go terribly well, so I'm not sure how that's going to be reflected in who they play. Carolina, which is not exactly one of the few teams that can play here they have no local attendance. Basically, there's not a lot of Panthers fans in town, so a lot of games that they play in Glendale, it's not quite 50-50 unless Pittsburgh's here or the Cowboys, but it's going to be a local fan base for the second home game in a couple of weeks. We'll see how much there is then.
People love coming to Phoenix, Bob Kemp, don't they?
They do, yeah. I've done it a couple different times come to Arizona. So there you go.
He is at the former Deuce, now the Sports Zone, out in the desert at KDUS AM 1060. Bob Kemp's been my friend for 2 decades, doing the overnights. What's your favorite Northbrook, Illinois 101 sporting news memory, Bob? I have to ask you this because this summer I wanted to take a month off because the Orioles were so awful. I'm doing this overtly political campaign called Baltimore Positive to make my city better, and I went through all of my tapes. So I found all of the tapes from back in 99, 2000. I have 74 interviews with NFL Hall of Famers, like 52 with Baseball Hall of Famers. I found stuff on the network with Frank Robinson and Bowie Kuhn, stuff that I forgot that I had done, for George Brett from 20 years ago. So I ran it all, and, that whole part of my life, it sort of follows me around in some way because I met so many cool people when I was out in Chicago working with you guys.
I got kind of a different take, though, because I was doing the overnight. So
you didn't see anybody.
Almost everything I did was just, take calls, and, thank God there were a million of them for, each, however many years, I guess it was from 1990 to 2002. And so I was more of a, fan caller-generated show, and I did do some interviews with mainly writers or guys that we had that covered the NFL, Bob Glauber, of course, and others, but it was a whole different thing. As far as a favorite moment, I don't know if it's a favorite moment, but a couple of days just trying to figure out if I was going to get snowed in for a couple of days. Chevalier, you mentioned him. He used to pay the interns to go start his car up and warm it up like 20 minutes before he left. It's kind of like he had his own valet service going there.
I miss him. I miss his voice. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
His preps where he'd come in his yellow legal pad and try out his soliloquies on me. He was the best. Bob Kemp and I worked together at Sporting News Radio a billion years ago. He's out in Arizona doing it. So what makes Arizona tick these days, right? Like the baseball thing doesn't feel like it's larger than life. I mean, obviously Marvin's out there and Arizona State's trying to get themselves together. What do you spend your days talking about, Bob?
Well, kind of a combination of those things. I mean, we're kind of at a down time right now because obviously the Cardinals had the first pick, the Suns had the first pick a couple years ago, and then another high draft pick this past year. The Diamondbacks actually really surprised me, and they are a phenomenally run organization as far as the baseball side because their talent level is below 500, and coupled with the fact that the Lovello and the general manager, Mike Hazen, who I'm afraid might end up back with the Red Sox, he came from there, and after the Dombrowski firing, we're hoping he doesn't go there. But the combination of those two, they have totally maxed out, and the fact that the National League wild card is not exactly the elite battling for that spot, or those two spots, I think that's kind of right now up there. And certainly it's still a Cardinals-generated town, and as long as they've only lost. Well, actually, they haven't lost a game. In my mind, they did lose the game on Sunday. Everybody around here is like they're doing the moral victory thing. But if they're like last year and they're like 1-3 to start the season, or 0-4 or 3-1, I guess it is at the end of the month, it'd be interesting to see what happens at that point. But it's not exactly a town full of winners at the moment. And around here with so many people that aren't originally from here. It's you need to win first for people to show up.
Well, that garbage golf open will be happening out there in Scottsdale at some point, and everybody will be screaming at the players, hey, you got Adam Jones out of this. I mean, so we do follow Adam Jones from afar here, so that's worked out okay for the DBs, right?
It has. I mean, he really got off to a tremendous start, and they kind of found out, I'd say, pretty quickly within a couple of months that he can't be playing a lot at this stage of his career, but he's the old clubhouse thing, which oftentimes I think is totally overblown and a bunch of baloney. In this case, it has been terrific because they have a lot of younger players, and he's been a tremendous asset to them and the organization.
Good dude, Adam Jones. Did a lot of good here. I'm sure he'll come back and do some more as well. Bob Kemp is our guest. He's out in the desert. The Arizona Cardinals coming east for the morning game, the dreaded morning game that Vegas would always get involved in. Bob, you don't have high hopes for the Cards this week, do you?
I don't. Obviously, I don't think I wouldn't have changed my opinion one way or the other of what happened with the Ravens the other day. I just think this is it's a rough matchup for the Cardinals for a couple of reasons. One, I mentioned the offensive line. And the second reason is that Patrick Peterson suspended for the first 6 games. They brought in Robert Alford to be the opposite corner, and he's out for 8 weeks at least. He broke his leg actually in training camp. And the fact that they basically are playing guys, really a rookie and then an undrafted second-year guy are 2 of their top 5 with defensive backs now. That doesn't seem to be the best of matchups. And here's another thing. Obviously, if I assume the Ravens did not run Jackson much last week because they didn't have to, but if it comes down to that, they've got linebackers that have had problems tackling, especially the inside guys, so we'll see if that happens. I'll tell you your guy, Terrell Suggs, though, who I was really wondering if he had any gas left in the tank, because he did nothing in training camp and did nothing in the preseason, and I think I've established after Sunday when he was one of the best players on the field in the first regular season game, I've established now that he just didn't really care and was just waiting for the season to start.
Well, he will be the best player for 6 weeks because that's who he is at this point in his career. We saw that with Steve Smith here. These guys, when they get into the 30s, I mean, they're good in September. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. December's a lot more difficult when you're 37 or 38. I'm 50, Bob, so I know that for a fact. But in the case of Suggs, he always wanted to go out there and play. Eric DaCosta described it to me and publicly and privately as shocked. Shocked that they all thought he was coming back here. They all thought he wanted to finish his thing here. And he just, had that epiphany. I mean, all those years, he always wanted to play there. He always sort of threatened to play there. He always wore Arizona swag, and he had all that stuff going on, always Phoenixed up. That he's doing this, I'm not shocked by that. And I'll tell you this, and I would have told you this if I was on your show, he has more pride than you can imagine. I mean, he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's my least favorite Raven. He's the guy that I'm so happy is gone because I just thought he brought the air down in a room. I mean, I'm not a Terrell Suggs fan at all, but as a football player, he's a Hall of Fame football player, and I may have to be the guy going in and making the case for that at some point down the line. But I'm not shocked that he has the kind of pride to go back there. He's not just collecting a check. He wants to help the Arizona Cardinals win. He's always loved the Cardinals,
They did another good thing. I assume this is going to be going on all year. They did a good job monitoring his snaps last week in the week 1. And, he'd be out there for a couple consecutive series. But, he had a lot of juice left in the fourth quarter. It is still week 1, as you mentioned. But it'll be interesting to see what kind of homecomings he's going to get back there.
We have been writing him off since Ray Lewis. Like, literally, we've been writing him off since the first Achilles. I mean, he's a witch. I mean, so to think that he's going to come back here, he wants 3 sacks. He wants to land on Lamar Jackson. He wants to catch Lamar Jackson. I have no doubt about that. So this will be a big week for him. And the kind of homecoming he'll get here, he'll get cheered here. He was the guy coming out of the tunnel, raising the roof after Ray Lewis stopped dancing. They love him here. I mean, his jerseys are everywhere here. He won a championship, and I think he's going to the Hall of Fame. Do you agree with that, Bob?
Absolutely. And I'm pretty sure he's going to talk to the local media here today or tomorrow, Wednesday or Thursday. And then also, I'm assuming he's going to have a conference call with the local media there, too.
Man, I went to a James Bond party he threw one night for a charity. It will be part of the story of my life when I write the book, Bob. Bob, I hope to read your book somewhere along the line as well. I mean, it's great that you've continued this journey doing sports radio out there, and you're always the most informed host we had around the network. So I do appreciate that, the part of the preparation you put into doing late night radio, man. And I have an affinity for all of my old Sporting News compadres. So I really appreciate you taking the call, man.
I appreciate all the kind words, and hopefully we can do this more often. Maybe the Super Bowl. This name, I guess probably not. Never mind.
I'll do the Super Bowl anytime. I'll be in Miami Beach. You come see me, Bob, all right?
Yeah. Okay, I'd like to do that. We'll see if we can work that out.
Anytime, man. Great to catch up with you. I hope to catch you out in the desert. Maybe we'll catch a San Diego Padres game up in Peoria next March or something. How about that?
I've been known to do that.
You and Manny Machado on a field. What could go wrong?
I'm sure we're all best friends, right?
Bob, man, appreciate it, man. We'll see you soon.
Okay, no problem. Thanks.
Bob Kemp. He has done sports radio for 3 decades. No one does it better. He does it at a KDUS, AM 1060 in the Sports Zone in Arizona. The Cardinals coming in. Terrell Suggs coming in this week and playing the Ravens. So, yeah, let's go beat Terrell Suggs. Let's go 2-0. Let's pick up where we left off at 59-10. We'll be talking to folks out in the desert all week. You can hear it out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn radio app. We come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. Our morning newspaper shipping digitally, bigger, better, bolder, and including Baltimore Positive, all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com, where it's $5 down and $10 a month. I am a very available individual. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel and the WNST tech service there for any breaking news. All comes to you first. Been doing that longer and better than anybody. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Baltimore Positive at Jennings Cafe on Thursday with Sarah Heminger of Thread. Can't wait to hear her story. Friday, we got Ben Jealous at State Fair in Catonsville. And, of course, all week long, you'll hear Ron Shapiro, Dick Cass, and the good doc, Reverend Al Hathaway, who I had some lunch with on Tuesday, is our guest this week. Incredible conversation. I heard it during an afternoon drive on Tuesday. We are getting ready for football around here. The Arizona Cardinals are coming to town, and we are talking about that and all sorts of cool Baltimore Positive things. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.